Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye vetoes a controversial law which gave lawmakers power over presidential or administrative ordinances. Outraged by the decision, the opposition party threatens to boycott parliament. Korea and Japan failed to reach a compromise over Seoul's ban on fishery imports from areas affected by the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Plus, with thousands of university student-athletes set to descend on Korea's southwestern city of Gwangju, we take a look at how preparations are going for the Gwangju Universiade, which kicks off next Friday. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, June 26th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye has vetoed revisions to the National Assembly law that gives the parliament power to request changes to ordinances, including presidential orders. It's the first time President Park has vetoed an Assembly-approved bill. Cho Yu-son starts us off.
Before the cabinet decided to call on the National Assembly to again discuss the disputed bill, President Park sternly explained that she had no other choice but to veto due to concerns over what she deemed administrative paralysis. She said giving the parliament power to request changes to ordinances infringes on the government's and the judicial branch's authority and therefore could be unconstitutional.
이 개정안은 국가 행정 체계와 사법 체계를 흔들 수 있는 주요한 사안으로 여야의 주고받기식이나 충분한 검토 없이 서둘러서 진행할 사안이 아닙니다.
The president said it's apparent the ruling and opposition political parties rushed the passage of the bill, citing that lawmakers are unclear about whether the request requires mandatory action by the government. She also took aim at the parliament for neglecting the people while prioritizing bills for political gain. President Park accused lawmakers of repeatedly blaming the government for not doing enough instead of passing bills aimed at revitalizing the economy and improving the people's livelihoods. In a rare move, the president targeted the ruling party floor leader, the chief negotiator for the bill and regular critic of her policies. Questioning the efforts of Yoo Seung-min in gaining parliamentary support for economic policies, President Park said politics is not something that can be used for one's political philosophy or logic. By exercising her veto power, the president has risked a head-on confrontation with the parliament and with both the rival political parties. Analysts say it was a practical move as she couldn't have allowed the parliament to meddle in her running of state affairs, especially as she comes close to the midpoint of her presidency. Choi Yu-son, Arirang News.
Now, all eyes are on what happens now after this presidential veto. For the National Assembly to pass the bill again, 2/3 of more than half of lawmakers present for a revote have to support the bill. But the ruling Seoul party has decided to not re-endorse the bill, while the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has suspended all legislative duties. Ji Myung-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri party said it respects President Park Geun-hye's decision to veto the revised parliamentary law.
We respect the president's decision to veto the revised National Assembly Act. The ruling party must carry out its duty.
However, the main opposition NPAD lashed out at President Park for rejecting the law, which was passed through the assembly by both parties last month.
The president does not respect the parliament, disregards the opposition party, and has a disdain for the people. She has denied the spirit of the Constitution and undermined democracy.
The NPAD suspended all legislative duties until the rejected law was put up for a vote again, as granted by the Constitution when a law is vetoed by the president, but the ruling party objected the motion. Meanwhile, Henry Party's pro-Park Geun-hye lawmakers criticized the party's floor leader Yoo Seung-min for negotiating the controversial revision with the MPAD when the presidential office was against it. They demanded Yoo's resignation, but the embattled floor leader brushed aside such demands and instead apologized, adding that he would endeavor to become a better negotiator for the party. With the opposition party's decision to boycott all parliamentary affairs and no consensus between both parties regarding a re-vote, the parliament has now come to a complete standstill. Kim Young-git, Arirang News.
Now, despite the main opposition party's boycott, the National Assembly did manage to pass a set of MERS-related bills aimed at establishing a new system to better respond to the outbreak of contagious diseases in the future. At a plenary session late Thursday, lawmakers from the ruling and opposition parties approved the package of bills in a swift manner, following a similar move by a sub-parliamentary committee on health and welfare earlier in the day. Now, under the revised health law, the government is now required to release a full list of patients suffering from contagious diseases, their routes, and the hospitals they stayed at on a real-time basis. And staying with the latest developments regarding the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome here in Korea, and the Health Ministry confirmed on Thursday that 2 more patients died from the virus, raising the death toll to 29. The total number of infections from the current outbreak has also risen to 180, of which 77 are still in the hospital, with 15 of them in unstable condition. On a brighter note, however, out of the confirmed cases, 74 have fully recovered and have been discharged from hospital. The number of quarantined has dropped by more than 460 on Thursday as well, to 2,600. Korea and Japan have failed to reach an agreement regarding their ongoing disputes over Seoul's import ban on Japanese fisheries products. According to Korea's Trade Ministry, the two sides held a 2-day consultative meeting at the headquarters of the World Trade Organization in Geneva to try and work out the trade dispute after Japan filed a complaint over Korea's import restriction back on May 21st. Now, as no agreement was reached, Japan is expected to ask the WTO for the establishment of a dispute settlement panel. Seoul implemented the ban amid fears over food safety in the wake of the Fukushima nuclear accident in 2011. Now, Japan argues such fears are inconsistent with WTO regulations and that Seoul has failed to provide enough information or justification for its measures. The United States has labelled North Korea's human rights record among the worst in the world last year. The US State Department's country reports on human rights practices for 2014, which was released on Thursday, said the regime commits systematic, widespread and gross human rights violations, and such violations constitute crimes against humanity. The report goes on to say that North Korean defectors continue to report public executions, disappearances, arbitrary arrest and detention, and torture, as well as severe punishment of repatriated refugees. It goes on to say that the regime still subjects citizens to rigid controls over most aspects of their lives, including denial of freedoms of expression, peaceful assembly, association, movement, and religion or belief. Now, since the Korean War, the two Koreas have more than gone their separate ways socially and politically. In terms of economic clout, there is absolutely no contest at all. The South has risen from the ashes of the war to become the world's 11th largest economy, while North Korea still struggles in poverty. Now, Kim Min-ji reports on the different paths the two Koreas have taken since the Korean War.
65 years on, the two Koreas stand on very different levels on the economic ladder. South Korea's economy is 43 times bigger than North Korea's and boasts a trade volume that is nearly 150-fold larger. Although Pyongyang has been stepping up efforts to reform and opening up its economy, experts say there have been limitations due to a socialist structure and inability to build enough trust to lure overseas capital.
North Korea is trying to pursue marketization, but it's not being achieved to its fullest, since it will pose a threat to the leaders' hold on power. Also, the North is a country that comes with risks. It doesn't abide by international regulations.
The North's relations with its main ally and trade partner China hasn't been on good footing either. They've been on different pages after Pyongyang carried out its third nuclear test in 2013. Recently, the regime has been cozying up to Russia, agreeing on several infrastructure projects and holding more frequent high-level exchanges. But trade between the two has only amounted to about $100 million, relatively small in size compared to the $6.5 billion it's reached with China. Experts say if Pyongyang is ever to foster an environment where it can steer its own economy, it will need Seoul to stand forefront and lift sanctions it imposed on the North after the torpedoing of a South Korean warship back in 2010.
The South needs to lift sanctions in order to expand trade with North Korea and provide a foundation for Pyongyang to lead its own economic growth. This will also help the North achieve the economic reforms it's trying to pursue. As we saw in Germany's case, huge costs accompany unification. This is the only way we can reduce the financial burden.
The experts said improving inter-Korean relations and achieving economic cooperation for now is the best way for Pyongyang to make use of its labor and resources and actively draw in capital to prop up its ailing economy. Kim Min-si, Arirang News.
Now, there's a chance you won't have heard about it, but Korea's biggest sporting event of the year is kicking off this time next week. It's the Gwangju Universiade, and it's drawing thousands upon thousands of young athletes from around the world to Korea's southwestern city of Gwangju. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Only a week remains before the 2015 Gwangju Universiade kicks off in Korea's southwestern city. The sporting extravaganza will be the largest in Universiade history, surpassing the previous record set at the 2013 event, when the Russian city of Kazan welcomed around 11,700 participants. Countries can register for the event all the way up to June 30th, but more than 13,000 athletes from 145 countries have already signed up for the event, which starts July 3rd. 65 sporting venues will be used for the various competitions, including 3 new stadiums built specifically for the Universiade, a multi-purpose gymnasium, swimming pool, and tennis stadium. The organizers say all the sporting facilities were constructed at a reasonable expense.
The government set our total budget at around $730 million, but we only spent $550 million, so we came in $181 million under budget. On top of this, the International University Sports Federation agreed for the first time in Universiade history to cover the entirety of our domestic marketing management costs. Thanks to that, we saved $90 million.
Sporting events of this magnitude never come cheap. But officials say the benefits to the city of Gwangju, the surrounding areas, and Korea as a whole make the outlay worth it.
The Bank of Korea says the Gwangju Universiade will bring in $90 million in direct economic effect thanks to the extra tourists coming in. Also, with a TV audience of 500 million in 100 countries, Korea's global position and awareness of our country will be enhanced.
The 12-day event, which starts next Friday, will see athletes compete in 21 different sporting categories for the total of 272 gold medals up for grabs. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Now, Korean food or hanshik is enjoying a real boom in popularity around the world, and this global awakening to the wide variety of delicious and healthy Korean dishes is being reflected at this year's World Expo in Milan. Na Hyung-kyung reports.
Era ottimo is what many Italians are saying as they leave the Korea Pavilion after tasting Korean food or hanshik. Korea is one of the 145 countries taking part in this year's Milan World Expo, with food being the main theme of the event. For some, it's a totally new experience, while for others, it's a delightful reunion.
I came to the Korean pavilion and liked it so much that I decided to stay for lunch. I really enjoy the Korean specialty cuisine and I would recommend it to everybody.
When I visited the Korea Pavilion last week, I really liked it, so I came back today, this time to eat. I like it so much that I think I'll come here again or find a Korean restaurant in Milan to have Korean food.
It hasn't been long since Korean food established its reputation in Italy. Industry experts say it's tough to please the palates of the locals because of the pride and love Italians have for their own cuisine and stronger presence of Japanese and Chinese cuisine. In Milan, for example, the number of Korean restaurants has tripled to about 9 from 6 years ago. However, they did not command much brand power until the expo. The restaurant at the Korea Pavilion has welcomed nearly 30,000 visitors for each of the past 2 months, and the chief manager says educating customers in terms of both plating and flavor of their meal is key.
We arranged the foods on one plate to clearly distinguish the appetizers, main dish, and dessert. We also created a recipe that would slightly reduce the flavor of garlic. It was enough to ease the customers into hanshik, yet maintain its authenticity.
What is certain is that the Milan Expo has stimulated interest in hanshik, but officials here do say that the next crucial step will be to keep this momentum beyond October after the expo ends. 나현경, Arirang News, Milan.
Well, that is all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. And we do hope to see you at the same time on Monday. Until then, goodbye.